Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring and 10 Paints or Less, my series in which I attempt to paint things using 10 paints or less. Today we're going to be looking at Ryza Pattern Ruins, and the reason I'm looking at these is because the set that I have here I acquired from Warhammer 40,000 Conquest magazine, and I didn't like the painting guide that they used. It was a good clean painting guide, but it didn't look ruined enough. So here's my alternative take. I started by spray painting the miniatures on the frame using Chaos Black, and then I've snipped them off, and now I'm going to give them 2 thin coats of Abaddon Black. Abaddon Black is a slightly different black to Chaos Black. It's a sort of bluer sort of black, and I'm going to use the biggest brush I have to do that. So it's slightly watered down Abaddon Black, and it's just 2 thin coats, making sure I get into all of the details and everything. So I've got a good solid black base coat to work from. So yeah, using a big brush helps with this. You don't have to use a massive brush like me, but there we go. And that's what it looks like when it's done. And then we're going to start with Chaotic Red. You're going to need 3 different reds for this paint. And what I'm doing is I am what I call wet brushing, other people call over brushing. Is where you load some paint onto the brush and then you whip it over the model, so you're not going into all of the details. You're hitting all of the raised points, but you are also hitting some of the other flat surfaces as well, but the very deepest recesses will remain black doing this. So it's not like a solid base coat colour. I'm going over the whole thing, and you don't have to be too careful about this, and you end up with something that looks like that. Then I'm going to Dragon Red, which is a lighter, brighter red, and I'm doing exactly the same thing again. I'm doing a wet brush. But not quite as heavily as I did with the first coat. So we're still going to be focusing mainly on the most raised details, still hitting those flat surfaces as well, but to get a tonal variation in the colours, but also the darker reds and the blacks will remain in the deepest recesses, and this brighter red will be on more of the raised surfaces. And I'm just going to go over all of the model, focusing on the edges and the top surface, all the things that obviously would get more light. And you end up with something that looks like that. And now we're going to go to Pure Red, and with Pure Red we are going to do a dry brush. This is our first dry brush, so I've switched to my large dry brush, and I'm going to focus dry brushing on all of the raised surfaces. So now we are avoiding those flat recessed surface panels. But all of the raised surfaces will get a good dry brushing of this brighter red. And you don't have to use the 3 reds that I've used here. Any 3 reds will do, as long as you've got them getting progressively lighter. And you see that I'm focusing mainly on the most raised surfaces. And that's all of the reds applied. And I think it looks kind of rough and ready, which is what we're going for. But now we're going to switch to Leadbelcher. And we're going to do a dry brush. With Leadbelcher, we're going to dry brush all of the edges where it's cracked and broken, just to show like the naked metal coming through from the painted surfaces. So dry brushing all of those bits where there's broken bits on the edges and the tops and the sides. And we're also going to put a dry brush over all of these vents and any other small details on the miniature, so pipes, control panels, anything like that. And I'm dry brushing here, not painting, so we're not worried about hitting every bit of those details. Some of them can stay red to look like they've got paint that's flaking off or whatever. And also when I'm applying the dry brush, I'm not being overly careful about not hitting the bits that I've already done in red, because any parts of the miniature that you hit with the Leadbelcher, it's just going to look like paint that's flaking off, exposing bare metal underneath. So you can be a little bit rough and ready about this, and it all adds to that ruined effect. This is a painting technique where you don't have to be very careful at all. And when you're done, you will end up with something that looks a little bit like that. So now we're going to one of my favourites, Chestnut Ink, and we're going to use Chestnut Ink to apply rust effects. So what I'm doing here is I'm applying a blob of Chestnut Ink to every bolt, and also on some of them I am dragging my brush down to create a rust trail, like the rust is pulled around the bolt and then dribbled down the surface. So I'm going to do that on every single bolt. And a few of the most exposed surfaces, and also I'm doing the tops of these vents and certain sections on other parts that I've painted with Leadbelcher, like the pipes. So you can see that the tops of the vents have now got a chestnut tone, and some of the pipes look like they've been rusted as well. And now we are going to Zandri Dust, and this is to make the ruins look dusty. So very heavy dry brushing around the base of the miniature, all the buttresses, all the support structures, the flat surfaces around the base. Just a very heavy dry brush over all of that, because that's where most of the dust would gather and pool, and as the ruins are being windswept, that's where the dust would collect and abrade the paint. But we're also going to put a dry brush on the other flat surfaces, so the section halfway up the ruins where there's flat surfaces, we're going to dry brush the tops of those, and also the very top of the miniature as well. And you can see here the final effect. So it looks like the paint has been abraded and dust is collected, and that is basically it. Done job. And yeah, it's rough and ready, but I think it creates a more ruined looking set of ruins than the painting guide that was in Warhammer 40,000 Conquest magazine, which, like I say, was not a bad painting guide. It gave a nice clean table ready finish, but I didn't particularly like it, so I went with something a little bit different. If you want to have even more damage effect on these ruins, you can use Nuln Oil and do the same effect that I did with the Chestnut Ink, but have it pooling out of the vents and things and dribbling down to look like little oil streaks. You can do more with metal colours to make it look like more of the paint is flecked off, and things like that. And obviously you can use rust technical paints to make other things look rusty on it as well. But anyway, that is it from me. A very quick and simple way to get these Ryza Pattern Ruins painted up and on the table ready for use. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.